Welcome to Flashpoints. I'm Jeff Pegues, joined by CBS News senior national security analyst Juan Zarate. As David Martin has reported, and you know this, there have been Russian troop movements into Syria and an airfield there. Let's talk about this and what this means for U.S. policy in terms of Syria. You have said that this is a problem that the U.S. has to find a solution for, the war in Syria. So what does this mean that the Russians are moving troops into that country?
Well, Russia has all along been supporting the Assad regime. We've known that. It's been clear. They've provided military support.
But this is an escalation.
This is an escalation. And interestingly, Jeff, they're being much more open and brazen about it, right? So they're not apologetic at all. And in fact, they're doubling down in many ways, both rhetorically and in terms of manpower. What this is I think the Russians trying to do a couple of things. One, they're trying to shape the narrative, right? They're supporting Assad against the Islamic State and these jihadi marauders. And so they're forcing the U.S. to come to grips with what's happening from a Russian and an Assad perspective. Secondly, I think they're trying to build leverage as they realize that the United States and the rest of the world is going to try to come to some sort of political accommodation in Syria. Those are the signals that have come from Secretary Kerry. That's clearly what the direction is if there's going to be a solution in Syria. And so the Russians are very smart. They're going to increase their leverage and their power and their presence. Keep in mind they have an interest in not just the Assad regime, a longtime ally, but their base, their naval base, which gives them an entree to the Mediterranean. And they clearly want to remain a player there. The challenge here is how do you ensure that this doesn't create additional conflict between the U.S. and Russia, miscalculation, for example, between our air forces?
Well, how much is Putin concerned about that? I mean, we've seen escalations in the Ukraine, for example. So what kind of response do you think he's anticipating from the U.S.? Do you think the U.S. now has to go the military route as well and introduce troops of its own? Or what are the options here for the administration?
Yeah, the U.S. is not going to introduce troops full force the way the Russians have into the Syrian conflict.
Why not?
Well, the Obama administration has made it clear that they're not going to. Second of all, the question would be tactically, where would you put them and in support of whom? We've had lots of fits and starts for the last three plus years to actually build up forces that we're aligned with. Those forces are scattered, some in the south, some in the north. The forces that the Department of Defense has tried to train have been taken hostage by the Jabhat al-Nusra, the al-Qaeda front. And so where would we actually go?
So then if you don't introduce troops, how do you respond?
Well, the U.S. has responded and tried to respond via proxy forces, supporting the Kurds in the north, which have taken territory, supporting the Free Syrian Army or elements of it.
And there's some disagreement about how successful that strategy has been.
Right. No, I think that's right. But I think your initial question is Putin's calculus. I think Putin's calculus is that the U.S. is not going to match it man for man or materiel for materiel. He realizes he can push the envelope and not only build his leverage, but perhaps even change the narrative on the ground. He knows that the U.S. has limits. The challenge for him, though, is the U.S. isn't going away. The U.S. is going to apply its air power. It's going to continue to supply its forces. If this humanitarian disaster increases, there's going to be calls for a safe zone, which will implicate taking broad swaths of territory sort of off the map militarily. And so he's going to have to contend with a very messy environment. But for now, he's in the driver's seat. He's supporting Assad. He's being very open about it. And he's building Russian leverage and influence in a conflict that has to have a political resolution.
And you said it. It is a messy environment, and we'll see what the situation goes as this story develops as well.
Absolutely.
For Juan, I'm Jeff, and that is Flashpoints.